right, welcome to the fourth episode already of the 4th and Long podcast for our fantasy league of, 4th and Long. It's me as always, Brian, and of course on the phone is our main man, Randy. Randy, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing all right. How's everybody else?
Oh, good, yeah, we're pretty excited. I don't know what it is, but the blood pressure goes up every Monday night, whether I'm in the game or not. We've had a couple good ones for our fantasy league. There a lot of chatter on Monday nights when the phone's going off at 10 at night because it's getting close. But that's what we want, right?
That's right. Yeah, I know. I was watching very closely that Monday nighter.
Oh, it was a good one. So why don't we dive into the good things that were last week? And I believe I went first last week. So why don't you start us off with what you thought was the best matchup of week 4?
Okay. My game of the week was Texas Walker Rangers versus the Bottom Feeders. And I always seem to be talking about Texas Walker Rangers every week. They always seem to be a close game. But it came out on top on this one, but it was pretty close. I like that it went down to the wire. As you know, I usually like the games that you stay up Monday night to watch. It actually started even close. Even the Thursday night game, Diggs got 12 points on the one side, and Dan Bailey got 15 on the other side. Which actually for that Thursday night game was actually pretty low scores.
Yeah.
I also liked they both got top-notch tight end play, which is something kind of rare for this year. There's only been like a couple of tight ends worth noticing, and one of the bigger ones, Gronk, hasn't done anything. So anytime you get double digits from a tight end, it's worth noting.
Yeah, no, yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, the rest, there were a whole bunch of players in this whole matchup that just matched up very well. You know, they were within 3 points of each other. The kickers were, the defenses were. Even the running back and wide receivers, they each had one that played well and one that, didn't necessarily play as well. And then the fact that the Bottom Feeders had 3 players in Monday Night Football just showed that, the game was never over. And it turns out they came out about a touchdown short.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. Just looking at the matchup that you've nominated here. First of all, who the hell is Kittle? From San Fran, but what a night he had, 125 yards with a touchdown against the Chargers defense that's normally not bad. So that was and of course he doesn't have Jimmy G either, right? So things are moving in San Fran, but you're right, not often do you get 2 tight ends in a matchup that are putting up the numbers that they did. What I find interesting with Texas Walker is he must be going nuts over the weeks Rodgers is having when his other quarterback on the bench is put up better numbers than Rodgers almost consistently.
And against better defenses, or at least, supposed better defenses, right?
Yeah, like 35 for Cousins against the Rams. Like, first of all, who would have thought Minnesota would have got that many points on that defense, and vice versa? Who would have thought the Rams would have got, Minnesota? But, yeah, just got to be tossing and turning with your quarterback matchup, and you're squeaking away wins. I mean, you got to be happy with that because the rest of your team's putting out numbers. But from the Bottom Feeder side, there's a lot of weight in that KC matchup there. So that was pretty interesting to see that shake down. Demaryius Thomas, I think, let him down a bit there with only 24 yards.
Yeah, especially, it was a pretty good game there. Not as high scoring as we've seen from previous ones, but of course Denver has a better defense, so that does make a little sense. I've also just kind of quickly noticed the last couple Thursday night games so far have been pretty entertaining. So Thursday night games are not usually known for that. So touch wood that continues because I always I love that we don't have to wait as long for the Thursday night game, but when the Thursday night game's a dud, kind of takes the fun out of watching football.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And speaking of that Denver game, I'm just going to transition into what I thought was the best game of the week. And I think it's going to catch a lot of people off guard based on the scores they put up. But I got Man Bear Pig versus Old Dirty Bastards, and I'll tell you why. When's the last time you've seen a matchup come down on a Monday night where it's a kicker versus a defense?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it because kickers and defenses are very unpredictable for their points.
Oh, absolutely, and here's the example. Denver, they lost lost the game, as we all know. But they don't have a terrible defense, but they only produced 1 point, where Jake had no choice but to pick up McManus, and we talked about that acquisition a few weeks ago. He goes out and gets 16, and most of those were the Denver's offensive points. It's just too bad KC maybe couldn't have punched in a couple more runs or some tosses. I'm sure bottom feeders would have been happy with that, but so would have Jake. And what a close matchup that was. And you have to remember too, OJ Howard, the tight end for Tampa Bay, didn't even play.
Yeah.
And he gets 0.
He got hurt in the warm-up?
Something like that. So he gets 0 on that.
Yeah.
Ted Ginn gets zero point 0.1 points. You never know. And now I think that question has got to be in Jake's head: is Ben legit now, or do we go with Wentz again? So both of those teams are now 2-2. So that was for me, that was very interesting because, like I say, not often does it come down to a kicker versus a defense on a Monday night with a win on the line. So just kind of a different perspective for matchup of the week. Then I guess I'll just transition right into the worst game. For me, it was Misfits versus Shelley Told Me To. This was Selby got blown out by 38 points. And 40-something points, but he was actually 38 points below his projected start number, that's a nosedive and a half. He has Fournette, who he played, and you know what? I can't blame him for that, because I started him in another league, and he mind-fucked a lot of GMs this week. He goes in, and that hamstring just gets re-aggravated. It's like, was he really ready to come back? What happened there? Is it just a fluke? Who knows? But when you got a guy like that, and he's been out for a little bit, and he got the green light, and then he doesn't do anything, it's just frustrating. He also has mini defense, which I call now the mini minus. They had -3 points there, and we talked about that. First of all, Buffalo put up how many on them? 24, 27?
Yeah, something like that.
And the Rams put up 38, and I just got a question here, is just like, what's going on with Minnesota's defense? They're usually in the top 5 projected fantasy defense, and we're early in the season yet, but you got to think, like, that's already in 2 games out of 4. That's they've allowed like 50 plus points, almost 60 points in 2 games from a defensive perspective. So all around, just a sub projection for Selby Told Me To. And then for the Misfits, Nigel, he's going to be happy. He finally produced a pretty decent fantasy week. Watson came alive, got some, and what a waiver pickup for that Lindsey in Denver. I thought Royce Freeman was going to be their golden pony, and we might have a little bit of an RB committee going on there in Denver. And not to mention, I don't think Burton got all the love, but Trubisky also threw a fair number of touchdowns against Tampa Bay, and Burton came alive as a tight end, which again we talked about is kind of hard to do in this league with 12 GMs. But that's although some good points for Nigel, I just think from a matchups perspective, the spread was too far apart, and it just was not a good one.
Yeah, and that's the one I picked too for the same reason. Especially. With Nigel and his lineup being thin, we've talked about this in recent weeks, in past weeks, and this might have been a chance where if you were going to have a bad game, it's better to do this against the Misfits than say the Bears. But yeah, I guess I kind of wrote this down. This is Misfits Recipe for Success, courtesy of Randy, of course. But I mentioned last week, the only chance he has to win is Deshaun Watson going off, Amari Cooper going off, and 2 touchdowns from the rest of his starters. And sure enough, what happened? Deshaun Watson, 32 points, Amari Cooper, 19 points, and a touchdown for Lindsey and a touchdown for Burton. Exactly what I said would happen if he gets the win. Quite handily, of course, Selby didn't put up much of a fight, but still, 111 points. You still got a good chance to win. And really, like, even looking at Selby's bench, Mariota would have been a big help, but really, who would have started Mariota against the Philly defense over, a proven veteran, Russell Wilson? Now, of course, Wilson's having a terrible year so far. It's kind of the same situation as last year, where his offensive line and his running backs are no good. But last year he seemed to put up good fantasy points, even though he was always throwing out prayers. But I guess I guess his magic appears to be running out. He's going to need some help on that offensive line.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, just all you never know, eh? But we're a quarter of the way done the season, but we're also into bye weeks, right? So this is what we talked about last week. So things are going to get very interesting here from a matchup perspective per se, right? So but that's kind of the recap on what we thought was the good and the bad of week four. Now we can kind of get into some player of the weeks and some busts. So, Randy, why don't you just tell me who you thought player of the week was for you?
You might be thinking this thing one, but my player of the week is Alvin Kamara for the Bears. I mean, what can you say about the season he's had? And then, just even the week he had 36 points. And just as a note, uh, the Bears won by 37, and Kamara got 36. You do the math; it would have been close without it. 134 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, plus 47 yards receiving. Uh, it's not every day that your quarterback and your tight end will combine for half a point, and even less likely that you'll still win the game. And Kamara pretty much did that all on his own. It's not like Kelly of the Devil Raiders gave it away. I mean, 90 points and away. Um, Kamara is the highest non-quarterback scoring player with 101 points over 4 weeks. That's 25 points per week. That's his average so far. And now, of course, I'm sure you can imagine what that might be like to start with that many points because your boy Gurley averages something like 22 a week.
Mm-hmm.
So, how big an edge it is, and the fact that, most people are expecting the quarterbacks to at least be even. If your opponent gets 25, you think your quarterback should at least get 25 and match that. But it's really hard to expect any running back to match Kamara at this point.
Yeah, no, that's
There's only a couple in the league that are even possible to do it on a regular basis, and that's Gurley and maybe Zeke and maybe one or two other guys.
well. And from a Giants fan perspective, I mean, I'm happy we didn't allow Breeze just to sling touchdowns all day, but Kamara broke free on I think a 47-yard touchdown, and he had another one as well. And I mean, he's just too elusive now. The interesting thing is this week. And we'll just touch on this now quickly. We don't have to go into too much detail, Randy, but I'll just pose a quick question to you.
Sure.
Mark Ingram's back. What does that do to Kamara?
I think it just allows them to not have to rely on him as much. If you've got such a hot running back, you still ride him, but you don't. It gives you the option of, well, I don't see this happening, but if the Saints are ever up big in the fourth quarter, maybe they can give him a break, or they can give him a few breaks on third and really long or something like that, or if he gets hit really hard, you can take him out for a series or two. It allows you to be a lot safer, but they'd be fools not to use him at least regularly, especially since he's such a multi-dimensional threat. That's the stat line for the season: 275 rushing yards, but 336 receiving yards.
Yeah.
5 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown. Last year, his touchdowns were 8 on the ground and 5 in the air. So this guy hurts you from all angles. So it's not like you can even put Ingram in on third down because Kamara is a better receiving back anyways.
Yeah, no, I think, I'm just curious to see because Kamara's done so well, like you've pointed out already, and now you're bringing back a guy who wants the ball just as much, but they use them in different assets too, or different ways. So, we'll see if it hurts him or not. Maybe it boosts his. Maybe Mark Ingram plows the field and Kamara just vultures for a little bit. Who knows here? So, we'll see moving forward. But for me, my player of the week is a guy who didn't even play because Bear Pig benched him, Jared Goff. 465 yards, 5 touchdowns, only 1 sack. And again, we talked about this supposedly great Minnesota defense that Jared Goff just, from an offensive perspective, because the score was 38-31, but he can't play both sides of the field. But from his side of the field, they put up 38 points. And my goodness, I mean, you were loving it because you have Robert Woods. I'm loving it because I have Gurley who caught one. I also have Cooks who caught one. I believe somebody has Cooper Kupp who had a great day. Jared Goff he surprises me more and more each time he steps on the field. Now, he has a good offensive line to give him that time, plus that play action with Gurley. But yeah, Jared Goff and Jerry's got to be just as frustrated. I mean, he did get the win, but had he played Goff over Brady, well, we never know. But I think looking back on the matchups, you can't blame Man Bear Pig. I mean, Brady was playing Miami, whereas Goff was playing Minnesota. Hard to put Goff in there just because you're never sure what Minnesota's going to do. So, but I got an honorable mention here for you because it just pisses me off. Is Zeke. And I got to give him a shout out to you. Now, you won your matchup, and by the way, kudos to you. You had an unreal week. And 240 all-purpose yards with a touchdown. And in my opinion, this guy is single-handedly the face of Dallas. He is carrying that team, and I don't care what anybody says about Dak. Zeke is the guy, and he should have. And I told you this before. Zeke should have won Offensive Rookie of the Year, not Dak Prescott. And I think we're starting to see why.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you have so many of the big losses as receivers for the Cowboys, and like everyone knows Zeke's getting the ball. You know, they lost their starting center. The Cowboys did, and you would think that he gets stuff. They would just jam the box all the time. They just keep giving him the ball. Hopefully, this doesn't end up hurting him, injury-wise, because he's being used a lot. But for the time being, just keep riding him, and I'm enjoying the benefits of it so far.
Well, I watched the game, and I saw Dallas march down for Golden Tate, and I thought, oh boy, what a drive! Like Detroit's got him now. And then again, Dak threw Zeke the ball, but Zeke had to come down with it with a defender on him. He also ran a few yards before that. He gets those first downs. He gets you in field goal range. And I was like, oh boy, I really wanted Dallas to lose that game because I figured the Giants were going to lose to the Saints. So at least I could maybe keep a few more teams close in the division. But Zeke is. I got to give him a shout out to you. He's your boy and former Buckeye, so I love him a little bit. But and again, kudos to you. You had a good week. So we can hop into the bus here. We don't need to praise people too long. We might as well slam people now. I had a really interesting matchup with Clueless, and man, did it come down to a few things. I was starting to get worried on Monday when Pittsburgh had their little, the Sunday night game. I thought, oh boy, I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but I mean, I did end up getting 130 and I won. But what's interesting here is from Clueless's perspective, he's not going to like me say this, but Jordan Howard was my bust of the week. What Chicago did to Tampa Bay was just ruthless. And you think, if you look at the score, you're thinking, oh, they probably ran in a few. He only had 11. He had 11 attempts for only 25 yards. He wasn't injured.
Yeah.
They just didn't use him, and it seemed like they totally abandoned the run. And it potentially could have cost Clueless a win. I mean, I only beat him by 19, I think.
Yeah.
And Howard's a stud running back on a clicking offense, so you never know what could have happened there. And for me, I think that's an obvious bust.
Well, yeah, especially when you see about how Chicago was just thrashing them, and you think, well, okay, yeah, they're going to keep the ball on the ground for a bit. Now, of course, Cohen, Cohen and Howard kind of share the backfield, but they still get enough touches and enough yards that both of them are starters on their respective fantasy teams. So, you'd think you'd get something out of a blowout like that, at least get some yards chewed up or something, but no, it didn't happen for him.
No, yeah, so that's I'm happy he didn't produce, but he for me is the bust of the week.
Yeah, mine is also a running back, and this has been a bust for a little while. And I know Kelly's gonna hate that we're always piling on him, but he keeps losing because he keeps getting the bust. It's Kenyon Drake.
I know, I feel for this guy.
He started the season not too bad. He had 25 rushes in the first 2 games, but after 4 games, he's up to 33 rushes. That's it. So they are not using him. And, okay, they've got Frank Gore on there, but Gore's as old as the hills now, and 100, 107 yards in 4 games, and only 14 targets as a receiver. So he's not being used at all, and he's supposed to be this good young guy.
Oh, yeah.
And last week he had 3 rushing yards on 3 rushes. That's it. And really the bigger problem is the Dolphins' offense in general. They just don't possess the ball enough. So whether it's the Dolphins' offense that's ruining it for Drake or Drake ruining it for the Dolphins' offense is I'm not really sure. I haven't watched that many Miami games, but they can't seem to move the ball, so he doesn't even get that many opportunities.
Well, and I know I for sure talked about it. I said Brady would probably bounce back because they're going up against that divisional 3-0 at the time, Miami. And it was a game that I suggested people watch. Score-wise, not exciting, but New England did what they had to do, and they shut down every opportunity that Miami had. And I think now Miami is thinking, fuck, maybe we're not as good as what we thought we were, being 3-0. We just lost to the gods of the AFC East again.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that's going to mentally get into them, or can they just say, okay, yep, New England was who they were, and we're going to continue on. But Devil Raiders is just getting punished by his guys not performing.
Mm-hmm. And he's got some players that are performing, which is kind of extra painful.
I know. So that's kind of our recap on week 4, the news that was. But I think we should probably switch gears and start predicting what we think is going to happen in this upcoming week, starting tomorrow for week 5. Matchup of the week. I think I'll start this one off if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I got you versus the Bears. There's only a 4-point separation between you. And if I was printing a news article in 1920 New York, the kid would be saying, "Can Jaeger slay the Titan?" because you've put up your best week yet last week. You're going up against a 4-0 team. This could be a big move here. This is you're sitting in 6. This could shift the tide here a little bit for both of you. But looking at your matchups on your respective rosters, everybody's pretty close point-wise. Also, matchup-wise, it's going to be interesting to see how your guys on each of your rosters perform. I think you personally have a few more favorable matchups. You got Seattle in there, who really hasn't been doing too much. You got a couple people going up against Pittsburgh, who's had their issues. And you have a really good wideout going up against Oakland, who we know is just atrocious right now. But the Bears, I'm curious to see, out of all the players, because he stole him from me from the waiver wire, FYI. He grabbed a new Cincinnati tight end because I forgot the Azuma.
Yeah.
He's only projected for 3.9, but man, Dalton likes to go to that position, and that offense is playing very well lately. They're going up against Miami, who we all know, and we just talked about. So I'm curious to see, because I think right now, Randy, that's going to be the make or break in your matchup. If everybody performs, what's this guy going to do? Because 3.9 is such a low projection that he can obviously catch a ball and be above projections. So that's going to be very interesting. But what I also like about you, and I wrote a note here, is are you going to give your kid another chance in Chubb, or are you happy with how your roster's playing out? Because, my goodness, did he play good last week. I think he got you 22 on the bench.
He did, yes. I think, though, that was on, 2 big plays, if I recall. Or maybe that was the week before. But, yeah, I have been considering it because Lamar Miller has been a disappointment. And actually, my game of the week is the same one. I'm looking at this one, too. Especially since, like I talked about Kamara, and, I think Zeke is one of the few running backs in the league that can actually match him. So if I can match him, but will Miller be able to match Barkley? I don't think he will, but will Chubb do any better? That's kind of my point there. I have to make up ground somewhere else. And it's kind of interesting. We both had to add tight ends, actually, on the waiver.
Oh, yeah, I see that, yeah.
Line up and saw that we had a couple open spots at tight end. I said, I wonder if he's looking at the same tight end I have. Well, turns out he wasn't. I picked up Hooper from Atlanta. Obviously, I'm hoping my boy Matty Ice is going to continue his hot hand, and against the Steelers, I'm thinking that he will. Yeah, hopefully he throws a touchdown pass or two to Hooper and kind of gives me double points there, kind of double dips it. Yeah, it's very interesting. That's kind of where I think I'll make up some ground, is at the quarterback position, but, he already had his bye week with Tannehill, and he's obviously already put old Superman back in. You know, Cam Newton has been playing well, so I don't know how much I'll be able to gain on that one. But yeah, like there are so many small things that could go here. Yeah, like this is my matchup of the week too. I was kind of wondering who would be the first one to knock down the Bears, and just with the way that some of my players have been hot, I think this could be a good chance to do it. It'll at least be interesting to watch, and of course, I'm watching my own matchup, so I'll be watching it.
Yeah, well, I just looking at it here in live time. I'm not sure what you're going to do with your defensive position. You got Houston in there playing Dallas, but then you have Zeke starting. It's almost like you're handcuffing yourself. And that's interesting, but that's not for live air conversation. But who knows what'll happen. But actually, you bring up Superman. The Giants have actually given up the 12th fewest fantasy points to the quarterback position, and they have played Blake Bortles, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, and Drew Brees. So just to give you an example of who they've played at the quarterback position. Now, Newton, I think, fits in that category. So if the trend continues, look for Newton to be sub-projections. That's what I think. But all around, I think this is the one to watch. Who do you got for Player of the Week? What do you individual awards? Who do you got?
Well, like I said before, when we were talking about the matchup, I'm actually looking for the Atlanta-Pittsburgh game to be a blowout, similar to the Atlanta-New Orleans game from a couple weeks back. So, of course, Matt Ryan and Big Ben, I'm expecting big games. And, of course, by extension, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Antonio Brown. I'm expecting them all to have big games. Every one of them. They might not all get touchdowns, but there'll be a lot of yards because there's a lot of defense that can't stop the pass. You can throw up a duck there and they won't get it. At the same time, I'm looking for a lot of guys on your team to do well, especially Gurley and the Rams defense. I think you touched on that before. I'm kind of hoping that there's an exception to this last one because I don't know if the Rams receivers will do that well. Now, of course, that exception I'm hoping for is Robert Woods. That he'll still play good, but I think that LA Seattle game will just be run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. It'll never be close. They won't ever have to throw it. The Rams will never have to throw it. I think Seattle just gets slaughtered.
Yeah, well, for me, I'm hoping for that, but I'm going to stick with the with the run game, and I'm going to say that the Player of the Week is going to be Melvin Gordon for global warming. He's going up against a terrible Oakland rush defense. They're currently giving up the 7th most fantasy points to the position, and I touched base on what your boy, the rookie, did. Chubb actually, I just checked. He put up 105 on the ground with 2 touchdowns, and that's from a Cleveland perspective. Melvin Gordon is Hall of Fame compared to Nick Chubb. So, and I don't think Oakland has gotten any better since they've played with Cleveland. So look for Gordon to have a huge break, and I think this is going to be good news for global warming because he did get punished last week. But I think I'm going to go out on a projection here, and I'm going to say he's going to be 125 plus with 2 touchdowns. I'm going to say he catches 1 and runs in 1.
Okay.
So that's kind of a little bold prediction, as you like to call it. Yeah. So, but now this is where you might laugh, and global warming's probably going to swear. I think the bust of the week is going to be from global warming. Kareem Hunt.
Oh.
Now hear me out here. Yeah, KC has not played a team like Jacksonville yet. Now you can say what you want about the Denver game, but we all know you take any NFL team and make them play a divisional game, what happens? Everybody increases the level of play.
That's right.
So the divisional games mean something, but from a fantasy perspective, it's almost skewed because it is what it is. Uh, Jacksonville has allowed the fifth fewest fantasy points against the running back. And if you don't know this, Kareem Hunt, I know it's only been 4 games and he's this amazing athlete and great football player, but he's only had one game over 100. Now, here's the other interesting thing: 2 of his 4 games have been under 50 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just saying, last week I said Isaiah Crowell would be the bust of the week, and he got .3 points. And who did the Jets play last week? Do you remember? They played the Jacksonville. So I got to stick with this. I think Jacksonville is shutting down the run game, and they're forcing teams to pass on them because Jalen Ramsey is waiting in the wings. So
Yeah.
I think Kareem Hunt, and not often are you going to hear that big of a name be a bust, but I think he is going to be a bust this week.
Well, that's very interesting. My busts are kind of the same thing. Any of the Chiefs stars, I don't think will do very well. Just as an extension of that, if they can't run the ball, like I think maybe the only exception to that might be Kelsey. He might still do well because I don't think Ramsey's ever going to be covering him. But still, yeah, like that game against Denver was a tough defense, but the Jags are even better. They're an even tougher defense. So, I'm expecting a lower game from them. I'm also expecting the Vikings-Eagles game, the rematch of the NFC Championship game, to be very rough, but obviously not high flying like the Thursday night game was. Yeah. It's not going to be very high flying, so don't expect too much out of those guys either.
So when we did when we did the podcast last week, we kind of introduced that question and answer period.
Yeah.
So I kind of have one here for you, and it's kind of a two-parter, but you can answer it in one, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing what you know now from this season and seeing the roughing the passer calls,
Yeah.
if you were to go back to your draft, does that affect when and who you would have chosen as a defense? And that's question one. And question two is, moving forward with who you've drafted, how does those calls affect a fantasy's defense value?
Well, it affects the value because it takes away all these sacks, right? Aside from the fact it also is a 15-yard penalty, it extends all these drives and it allows more points on the board. But it will especially hurt defenses that are known for good pass rushes, because you got to assume eventually these good pass rushers are going to get to the quarterback. They don't always get one hand on the guy or anything like that and bring him down like that, or they don't always hit him properly. But there's so many ways to get the penalty now that you almost want a defense that doesn't rush the quarterback that much, or at least does more bull rushes and just pushes the offensive line into the quarterback's lap, forcing a bad throw. I don't think it would affect how you draft. It wouldn't affect how I draft, because the way I look at a defense, I look at a defense from a couple different directions. Not just sacks. Sacks get you points, but a lot of it is points scored, which might depend on just as much on how good their division or how poor their division is, or how many good offenses they're playing. How many times they're playing Drew Brees in a year and so on. And then obviously, turnovers and such. The return touchdowns, I think, are still also in the defense. I don't look as much in that because that's kind of a one-off thing. But, it wouldn't change my draft strategy at all, just because, I don't place sacks that high a priority when I'm picking a defense.
Okay.
But that's how that penalty affects it the most, is just by taking away so many sacks.
Yeah, I was thinking about this when all the topic of the flags come up, and it's like, you go and you make that play and you get that roughing the passer, whether it's legit or phony, or soft is a better word. That 15 yards makes a big difference. And then, of course, how fantasy defenses work are you want to not allow any points. So if the offense you're playing gets that extra 15 to get closer, and even if it's a field goal, you've already started to reduce the amount of points that the defense can get. So I think just on a week to week in that aspect, I think you're right. I think it does affect how many points they get. But I just thought if there was a scenario where this would affect how you draft, I thought I'd throw that second question in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it's my turn to ask you a question. I'll ask you a question about our league specifically. Right now, we've got 6 teams at 2-2, so we got a real logjam in the middle of the standings. Only 2 of those teams are playing each other, but a bunch of the other ones, myself included, have really tough matchups coming up. So there's a good chance that a good number of these 2-2 teams could be 2 or 3. I know it's a bit early, but just judging by what the standings look like and how some of the real, we've got a couple of teams that are really hard to beat up at the top. If if any of us that lose this week and go down to 2 and 3, what do you think are the chances are of being able to come back? I know it's early, but things are going to start separating soon, and I know there's still quite a few up to grabs, but how do you see it playing out with if you lose this week, you got that much of a hill to climb? How do you see the odds of someone at 2 and 3 coming and crawling back into the playoffs and making some noise once there?
Yeah, no, that's a. So right now, just based on projections, if everything goes according to plan, next week there'll be 4 teams at 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the chips fall. Yeah, I mean, if we're playing a 16-game season, there's nothing to worry about being 2 and 3, because we do have a 4-0 and we have an 0-4. We also have 2 1-3s. So even if they win, they're still below, most likely because they probably lost to one of those 2 and 3 teams. But again, we're not playing a 16-game season, are we? We play 13, so that's 5, so that's 8 left. Um, I don't think there's room for panic yet. I think if you start separating and going 2 and 4, 2 and 5, then you have issues. 2 and 3, nothing to be too concerned about. But it also depends where you're at, and who you're playing. What does your schedule look like? And how that breaks down for division leaders, and then points for. Is it division ties? Like, there's a lot of factors that come into play there. If I was to look at the 2 and 2 teams right now, I think if I had to give my honest opinion, I myself in 2 and 2.
Yes.
I I I think I don't have anything to worry about, and that's not being cocky. I think I have a balanced team that has put up consistent numbers. I have the second most points for. It's not like my team is not doing anything.
That's right.
So I'm going to say that. Your team is coming along. I think there's a few spots there that can shake, but I think you're now starting to move in the right direction, and you're getting the production where you need it from. I think the Dirty Bastards are 2 and 2. In my personal opinion, I think they could also be 4-0. They lost 2 tough matchups where they almost came back from behind one because Ben screwed them over and didn't get the work done. And then, of course, this kicker versus defense. So again, you have a 2 and 2 who actually could be 4-0, which makes things interesting. So I think the old Dirty Bastards are in the right direction as well. The bottom feeders, I think it's as long as KC does what they do. If Mahone starts falling, we'll see how he adjusts to that. But I think he's in a position right now, which leaves us Man, Bear, Pig, and Misfits. And I think those 2, honestly, are probably the 2 and 2 teams who are probably going to find themselves in this predicament where I think your question is leaning towards is there cause for concern? I think for those 2 there is cause for concern. But that's how I would break down the 2 and 2s. But interestingly enough, like I say, the old Dirty Bastards is on a 2-game lose streak as a 2 and 2. So yeah, you never know. I think those 3-1s are interesting too. I also think Ryan global warming at a 1-3 is more concerned than a 2-2 right now. But I think he has the team to go 3-3 in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of football to be played here. But if you go 2-3, I don't think there's panic just yet.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, it is. It is early, and I know it's kind of early to ask a standings question so far, but I just noticed that there were 6 teams in that log jam. So, you know, just as to just want to know. Yeah, exactly. What you thought about how the standings might shake out in the next couple of weeks. But you're right. There's a lot of football to be played.
Well, and we're getting there, right? And then it makes it interesting, of course, if you go 3-2, and the Bears come down to 4-1, then that Titan seems beatable again, right? So, if Corey beats you and goes 5-0, I think he's given himself enough push that most likely, unless he slides 8 games, most likely he's getting in some capacity to the playoffs.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
He's probably positioned himself pretty good here, but
Exactly. Someone's got to knock him down. I hope I'm the one to do it.
well, I couldn't do it, and 3 others, so you might as well try.
Yeah, might as well.
So that kind of concludes the predictions for Week 5. Basically, before we sign off, Randy, what do you like for what games are you looking at to watch this week?
Well, again, I mentioned it a little earlier. The Vikings and the Eagles, the rematch of the NFC Championship game in which the Vikings disappointed. Both teams are a bit disappointing so far to start the year. So looking to see if this rematch can ignite a flame under one or both of these teams. So I'm kind of looking forward to watching that one.
I wrote down a lot, but I think there's 2 games to watch. I think there's 2 games to watch from a standings point of view, and that's Jacksonville KC. I think that's going to be a great game, but I think KC loses. Then the Rams versus Seattle, probably not so much entertainment value, but I think the reason I bring it up is I think the Rams will be the only undefeated team after Week 5.
Oh yeah.
But then, from a stats perspective and historical perspective, tomorrow night tune in, and Monday night tune in. Because we have 2 quarterbacks who could get into the 500 touchdown club.
Oh, there you go.
So we're getting pretty close to that. I think Brady needs 3, and I think Breeze needs 4. And both, technically, with the teams they're playing, could do it.
Yeah.
So, look for that because, guys, and I don't care what anybody says, coaches and players know that, so look for those guys to throw the ball as opposed to maybe running the ball in the next couple weeks just to get over the 500 hump.
Well, that would be nice.
So that's kind of the games I would like for everybody to watch. But yeah, anything else you want to add before we kind of sign off here?
I don't know. Do you think the Browns will win this week?
I don't think so. I think Baltimore looks good. From what they did to Pittsburgh, I think they're going to do even worse to Cleveland.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, no, I think Baker, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. He played not too bad, but, the Browns are still the Browns.
And that's just it, right? So, and Baltimore looks good. They have a good game plan. I thought Flacco for sure would be not where he is, but he's making some move. And man, John Brown, he sure come to life because I had him a couple of years ago with Arizona, and what a bust he was.
Well, yeah, I know he was supposed to be. Right there next to Larry Fitz, catching a lot of passes from Carson Palmer there, but didn't turn out.
Nope, but doesn't matter. Week 5 starts tomorrow, and everything we just talked about could all be fluff. So that's the beauty of fantasy. But until next week, we'll just sign off here, and good luck, everybody, in your matchups this week.
Talk to you later, guys.
Okay.